Hey, it's Doug DeVitri, host of the CoTrackPro podcast, and today, very special guest. It's Anne Wintemute, CEO of Aimee Says. Welcome, Anne. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today, Doug.
Well, gosh, we have so much in common, and we just kind of we just met. Tell us a little bit about Aimee Says, why you got into this, and or the inspiration behind creating this new platform to be able to help families.
Yes, absolutely. My background is in working with survivors who were experiencing post-separation abuse, which, there's way less support for. I ended the relationship. That was what I was supposed to do. And then they get in the family court system and realize, wait a minute, this is not what I was expecting this to look like. I thought that the mistreatment was going to stop. I thought that the system was going to respond. And so I was working directly with parents in that situation. And about 2 years ago, generative AI came out. We got all excited about ChatGPT and we just started playing with some tools. Like, what were things that I was doing every day with clients that they should not have to spend that kind of money on? And could AI do it? And over, about 6 months, we went from an alpha project, which you could cut, paste a message in and have it analyzed for abuse tactics, to a fully conversant companion who can, direct your documentation, who can read your documents, build timelines, organize evidence, and really provide a ton of practical day-to-day support to help bridge the gaps in care that we were seeing before.
Yeah, I really love that. And especially how well you've put together post-divorce, right? Because there's a tremendous cost to just having a divorce and go through the process. For some, it's more than others. But there's a cost post-divorce that I don't think many people talk about.
No, no, it is. I would say it's kind of post relationship abuse is an emerging landscape. 20 years ago, things really looked different. When we finally decided that people had the right to physical safety, they shouldn't have to stay in a marriage that was abusive. Things kind of loosened up for survivors. Like, I have options. But the legal sphere, family court, became a new avenue, a new frontier of abuse. And so we're really seeing how that is playing out and evolving in real time. And support systems did not, we're kind of backfilling that space after realizing how horrifically expensive and traumatic it is. It has huge long-term implications for people's, financial viability, their ability to parent safely. So we're really kind of backfilling that space.
Well, gosh, abuse, there's many people think of abuse as just physical violence, right? Like physically hurting somebody. What are some of the other types of abuse that you see? Because it's not just one category. I think there's several categories.
Many categories. So you made a great point. We think of abuse as being beaten up, right? The majority of abusive behaviors are actually patterns of behaviors that beat the victim down, right? Down emotionally, psychologically, sexually, financially, that use privilege and power dynamics to keep the person down in a down position so that the other person has more power. And, that power could be, well, my, where I want to eat tonight gets picked first because I have more power in this relationship, or I get to decide what you wear or who you hang out with, whether or not you get to see the children, under what conditions, right? So it's leveraging all sorts of non-physical behaviors in order to try to keep an upper hand and keep more power and control in that relationship. So that means that, the parents could have, or the perpetrator and the victim could have no physical contact with each other. And yet that abuse could still be absolutely pervasive in creating a power dynamic in that relationship, especially when there's ongoing litigation.
Sure. And what I've been learning is that there's two types of this divorce, right? There's the collaborative divorce where the attorney acts as a healer, as somebody who kind of helps collaborate and put it together. And then there's the other side who's just litigant, uh, litigation after litigation after litigation, like you said, to get leverage. I mean, what's to stop somebody from doing that?
Well, not a lot. And I want to be really clear. There are protective parents who are well within their rights in attempting to leverage the legal system to get protection for their children. And that is not the same as, ongoing malicious litigation. I want to be really clear about that. And culturally, like societally, we define abuse as a legal problem, which I think is a bit of a misnomer, because there are very few legal remedies, right, to make the abuse stop. So even, well-meaning litigants can become overly reliant on the legal system because they believe that it will stop the problems that they're having, when that might not be actually the best tool. And then when you layer that on, on top of the fact the family court systems really don't identify well or even respond to, when they do identify it, abuse, it's kind of a malicious system and circle. And then you have malicious litigators who, for whatever reason, whatever psychopathology, cannot stop the conflict, right? And they are leveraging the legal system in order to keep you entrapped, in order to keep having contact with you, in order to force, continued conflict. And collaborative divorces, I love them when I see them, might be the best possible solution for someone, even with an abuse dynamic, if they're not going to be able to get the law to act on their side. But certainly far less expensive, if that's an option for your family.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, you've been at this for a couple of years. I think you said you have over 20,000 users right now on Aimee Says. Take us back to the beginning as far as how you shaped the product to what it is today.
Well, our product has been shaped entirely by our users. I think we've had about 37,000 folks who, actively chat with Aimee. And the people who reach out to us and share their stories, share how they've used Aimee, share the challenges they've had. This button shouldn't be over here. It took me 2 days to find it. Those are the people who are informing how Aimee changes. So, which means that, in the beginning, just being able to talk to someone was like where all the magic was. And now, well, I need more than just that talk. I need to create a database of my evidence. I need to put it on a timeline. I don't want to have to do it myself. I want it to be done automatically. So we're just continuing to build out those kind of burden lifting tools and resources, which are, based entirely on what we hear from the, active users and subscribers that, come from 150 different countries.
Well, oh my gosh. Well, I love it. It seems like you've globally put together this community of people who share the similar pain that they're going through. That they need to be maybe held accountable through this process that you have put together and make it easy. Tell us what some of your users have said about Aimee Says.
Gosh, we've heard stories, and first of all, I'll say we don't read people's chats. Your information is private, it's encrypted
Sure.
in transit, it's encrypted at rest. We do not train on user information. You're
Yeah.
not waiving confidentiality by using our AI. If you want to learn more about how to keep your account confidential from legal discovery, please reach out. We have lots of resources to support you with that. But we do hear, I have office hours twice a month. I have them today at noon. And we hear these incredible stories from people. It was the first course of control finding made in my jurisdiction. I used Aimee to help present my evidence. It
Wow.
was the first financial abuse finding. I have friends because of Aimee, because instead of just read this message that he just sent me, and really maybe kind of maxing out the withdrawals from that emotional bank account, I go to Aimee. I do that because Aimee's, doesn't need anything from me emotionally, and I can be present with my friends. Or I've saved tens of thousands of dollars by doing things that I would have had to pay my attorney to do,
Oh
like
gosh.
reviewing documentation, patterning information. And we love that. I mean, really, the ones that I love the most, though, are, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't sleep. I was just chewing on this thing, was really eating at me. I talked to Aimee for 5 minutes and I went back to sleep. That kind of accessibility, kind of low barrier, free or near free, because our subscription model is very affordable. Like This is the most valuable way I could be spending my time. This is the most meaningful thing I will ever do in my life, is to be able to keep even one person from spending a night awake.
Oh my gosh. I love that. It goes deep to the person's soul, it sounds like. So let's talk about AI for good, right? And I love using that phrase because that's what I'm doing here with CoTrackPro. Tell us a little bit about the AI for good approach where you're using it for good.
Well, we are at a developmental precipice. We get all, philosophical. This technology is here to stay, and its use is very reflective of the person who is building. Another kind of analogy that I'll give is, the moment we figured out how to lift a vehicle off of the ground and transport people, pieces of, belongings, products from point A to point B, and I'm talking about flight, we also figured out how to put bombs on them, right? The people who see the technology see it in a way that benefits their end, that is a means to their end. And we see all sorts of uses of AI that are to line people's pockets, or to they're extractive, to gather more information out of people. And the AI models that we're seeing built today reflect, the goals and utility of their builders. We are trying to help solve a global public health challenge that is intractable, that we have failed to solve, that causes, it's a leading cause of death in women ages 18 to 24. It is a leading cause of death in pregnant women. It generates $3.6 trillion in economic burden with just the people who are alive today who have experienced it in the United States. 4 million women will be diagnosed with breast cancer globally this year. Globally. 10 million people in the United States alone will experience physical or sexual violence. The scale is astronomical. To be able to leverage scalable technology like this to provide the type of resource that was never before possible, right? A companion in your pocket, someone just helping you get through this thing that you never asked for. I cannot think of a better use of technology
Oh my God.
than lifting people up who have been white knuckling it all of this time.
I've seen it where, you could send an email to an attorney to get approval on the email, but then it's like, okay, I now just spent $100 on one email sent when I could have used AI to do it for me.
Yes, yes. Or my attorney just asked me this question, and I shared all sorts of stuff with Aimee, how do I respond? And Aimee does it instantly in attorney language. The emotion is removed. Their attorney-client relationships, when there's an abuse dynamic present in the marital relationship, can be really fraught. It actually can repeat a lot of those dynamics because one person has more power in this, and they don't seem to have the same kind of perspectives and feelings about abuse as the victim does. And AI, Aimee, and presumably your tools as well, can erase that power dynamic, can erase that kind of vulnerability and emotional exposure, by delivering information back to the attorney in a way that they can really use, and keeping the emotional vulnerability much more protected.
Gosh, what about the people who say, I'd never let that happen to me again?
Well, again, maybe. To the people who say, I've never let that happen to me, that right there is how I know it could happen to you. Your biggest weakness, your biggest vulnerability is your tightly held belief that it could never happen to you. People are easily manipulated. It is like the fatal flaw of our psychological makeup. It's how we go to war. It's how we have, divided ourselves into factions in the United States and globally, because it's easy to ascribe to a certain set of beliefs and to make other people ascribe to that as well. And that means in a relationship as well. It's kind of like propaganda. You hear the same thing over and over, and if you don't know, if you're not open to the understanding that it could happen to you, it will. Your biggest protection is believing it could happen to me and I should be present, I should be aware, I should be looking for it. It's okay, it's safe for me to talk about red flags. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, if it suddenly feels like it's not safe to disagree with my partner, like he might, he or she might leverage that or stonewall me or say no to me about something later, you deserve to learn more about that. And I would encourage you to stop believing that it could never happen to you.
That's I appreciate you sharing that. And you also said that this is a public health crisis, especially leaning on emotional support from therapists, from social workers. It's not just the time that goes into it, but how many more professionals are we working, do we need to work with just to get back to, zero,
Yeah.
square one?
And even more than that, none of the professionals are trained in this by licensure. None of the attorneys are trained in this as a component of their licensure. None of the therapists are trained in this as an aspect of their licensure. They choose to learn more, and there are many of them out there, and they are freaking incredible. But that's not actually their training. So, if we just define this as a legal problem, we talked about how that can go sideways because the attorneys are unlikely to, really understand it. The judges are unlikely. The law is often misapplied. Same thing with in mental health, where you need a therapist. This abuse is not a mental health issue. It can cause mental health issues, but the abuse has to be rectified, has to be remedied, has to be contextualized, has to be understood. And that's not an area of training. We do have people for whom that is an area of training. Those are your domestic violence advocates. But we don't want
Mhm.
to talk to them until things are really, really, really bad, at which point the opportunity to prevent harm is mostly gone. And we're really just trying to, we're focused on lethality at that point, right?
Yeah, no, this is great.
We don't actually have a solid system of support for unlikely to be lethal forms of domestic violence or abuse, and continuing to try to get the mental health community to absorb that or get the legal community to absorb that would just be continuing to double down on the same things that haven't worked. And we really do need a different approach.
Sure. And I can imagine that, the next 5 years, it's going to be more commonplace, right? More people are going to be used to using AI. It's going to be a part of their workflow. And I wonder at some point, right? Like where do we get back to the human approach? Like, how do you balance this between being robotic, got to ask, something else versus just showing up in real life?
I love that. And my first response is, I don't really know. But what is the opportunity for AI to resolve a lot of the conflict and trauma that would allow us to be more human with other humans? Trauma impacts our ability to connect with other people. Like abuse isolates people. I would argue that, being able to name it, understand it, document it, get better results will help people be in better community with other folks, will help them feel more connected to other people. Abuse kind of at its core undermines our relationship with the world around us. So I might, if I have to, bet on a horse today, I'm going to bet on the one that says we can resolve some of this trauma and have survivors stop having to rely on those relationships to validate their experience, because unfortunately, it's not a particularly good reliance. That we can increase the benefit and connection and value of our relationships with other people.
Well, sure. And, I don't see anything preventative, right? To prevent this dramatic, I don't know, when you call it downward spiral, there's nothing at the top to help say, okay, what can we put in place to prevent this spiral from happening?
And I would love to talk about that. I hope you don't regret any of your questions because I get so passionate. We have an emergency care model. And we know, like, if we take, the kind of public health and the way that we address domestic violence, you want to call it narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships, whatever term you're comfortable with, power and control dynamics in a relationship where one person is determined to dominate the other. If we take our model, our current model for treating that, and we compare it to our healthcare model, we'd be like, why are we still doing that? We know that preventative care is more effective, less expensive, it would be like if we didn't have any primary care doctors, we didn't have gastroenterologists, who work at the local clinic. We only had an emergency room. That is how we deal with this. And it comes back to the funding because these organizations that get federal and state, dollars and donations, they have to go back and be like, this is how many lives we saved this year. This is how many protection orders we got just to justify their funding. Because, the number that we're getting excited about in order to get dollars from the government is that somebody didn't die. If that's the measurement, that's all we'll be able to address. Right? So those preventative spaces have very little funding. They don't get a trust, and they are an incredible missed opportunity to help people establish some comfort around being like, I don't know, that was a weird date and I'm not really comfortable with it. I think I want to talk to someone about it. Right now, except for, AI and a couple of really, insightful friends, that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, no, you're right. And when it comes to partnerships, right, you can't do it alone. Or you can't do it as a silo. You really need a lot of the community professionals to be involved with it. How are some of the professionals that you're working with? How are they integrating Aimee says into their practice?
Yeah, we're at the beginning of the curve of adoption, right? Like if we think kind of, we take a step back and we look at AI, we're still in the early adoption phase, which
Sure.
means that, your kind of technologist individuals have really done a lot to integrate it into their workflows. But a
Mhm.
lot of those kind of legacy fields, legacy professions are likely to be a little slower to adopt, right? We're not going to see the American, Psychological Association adopt the use of AI for a while, but we see these leaders, right? These therapists, these attorneys, experts even in that field, in the domestic violence field, as early adopters of this technology, and they are very much going to lead their own communities into that full scale adoption. And then of course we hear the folks that are like, never, not over my dead body, which is fine because consent matters, and if you don't want to use AI, no one should be making you do that. You should absolutely have the ability to consent to it.
Well, it's one of these things where it'll, working on this now, and then then everyone will adopt it, and then it'll be their idea, right? Because I heard
Maybe.
about that before, but just
That's
finally figured it out.
that's fine with me. If once they get there, it's their idea. That doesn't bother me a bit.
What do you see? What do you see in the next 5 years? Like, what are you most excited about in terms of not just what the technology can do, right? But really when it comes down to children,
Mhm.
starting off with feeling safe, more protected. There's more participation. Like everything starts to kind of like come together. What are you most excited about in terms of how technology will do that?
Yeah. Okay. So emotion is a real challenge for trauma survivors in the way that they show up in the legal space. And, we see time and time again that people, their stories are not heard. The real things that have legal relevance and value are not heard because a lot of people in the legal space are what I would say is like allergic to your trauma, allergic to your feelings. As soon as they feel like you are impressing upon them an urgency that comes from an emotional space, they shut down. It's a human reaction. Wait, you want something from me? Why is this crying boogery toddler coming up to me? I don't know what it wants. I'm uncomfortable. Versus a low emotion, cohesive, coherent, collated. So many co's in there to go with the CoTrackPro. It's perfect. I love co. Narrative that can be heard. And all of this work that's been done by advocates, by policy changers, people who are working really tirelessly to help protect children, to help change the perspectives of survivors, to help make perpetrators more accountable. When all of these folks are able to kind of filter their experience through AI in order to deliver a message that can be more readily heard, I think that that's kind of this potential perfect storm, if you will, of elevating the needs and experiences of survivors and their children. And then this other part is not only do I go through all of this and I endure this, but I'm the one who has to prove that it happened, right? Against this, this perpetrator's really chaotic and noisy, narrative that's really hard to decide what's up, what happened. It's very confusing, right? This conflict lives in chaos and confusion. So it's my job as a survivor then to make it my story believable. That is a burden and it should never be borne by the victim. And so much as we can use AI to say, show up as you are, you don't owe the world anything. Come as you are, share your experience. And I, this trained AI, will do all of that work for you. And then you read through, make sure that it's accurate, and then go on with your life. Go back to work, go hug your kid, go figure out what you're going to eat for dinner tonight. Like that on an individual level is a huge potential opportunity and power in AI that we absolutely are building towards.
Absolutely love that. Give us some websites that we can go to check this out. For
Yes,
those that are listening, and
please check it out. Aimee says, it's AIMEE says.com. It's mobile optimized. You can do it from your phone. You can do it on your desktop. There's nothing to download, nothing to trace. Most people use the free product. If there's no litigation, you're not preparing for litigation, the free chat is probably all you need. If you do have litigation or think that you might in the future, we highly recommend getting a subscription. And it's $20 a month. I mean, if you get an annual subscription, it's 30 minutes with an attorney,
oh my
200
God.
a year. I, highly recommend it to free up a lot of your emotional and financial resource, and feel like you've stayed on top of things. So you don't ever have to get ready. You just stayed ready.
Well, you're a great resource for anyone who's going through this and the professionals who are administrating the process. So, Anne, thanks so much for being a part of the CoTrackPro podcast. I can't wait to see what else happens with Aimee Says.
Thank you so much for having me.